Welcome to Breaking Ties, Destination Divorce. This is your go-to source for practical advice and support while you go through the divorce process. Join us each weekday for a quick chat where we'll cover a variety of topics such as child custody, property division, and self-care. Together, we'll explore emotional, financial, and legal aspects of divorce and help you find the best path forward for you and your family. Here's your host and Certified Divorce Financial Analyst Professional, Mike Fulkerson.
Hello and welcome back to our last day of the Breaking Ties interview series with Chris Lunardini. I'm your host, Mike Fulkerson, financial advisor and certified divorce financial analyst professional. And Chris has been with us all week and he's been answering the questions. And I tell you what, the information and detail he's providing, just the little nuggets and tidbits is just, it's really cool, I think. I mean, you always learn something in these podcast interviews, and this week's was no exception. It's always great to get it straight from somebody who's so involved in the process themselves. Now, Chris is a divorce attorney with SPYRATOSDAVIS in Lisle, Illinois. And we are actually, like I said, on our last day. What do you think of the week so far, Chris?
I think it's been great. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm glad I'm able to share some information with people because I think that's really important in the divorce process.
Absolutely, because there is a lot of stuff going on during the divorce process. So anything you can do to bone up or learn, as you're going through it or before you go through it is only going to help you as the process goes on. And let's see. Well, since we're winding down today, let's get on a little bit of a feisty topic, and that's what if your spouse doesn't cooperate?
That's a good one. I do get those. I think you've got two types of uncooperative spouses. You have the one where they don't cooperate from the beginning, and actually that's not too bad of a situation. If they're not cooperating from the beginning, really all you have to do is make sure they're served with the paperwork, make sure your attorney reaches out to them to see if they'll get involved, make sure they're given notice of the upcoming court dates. And then if they fail to show up and don't participate, and they're supposed to file something with the court called an appearance, which is a document that says, I'm here, I'm representing myself, or I have an attorney representing me, and it lets the court know how to contact them. If a party doesn't file their appearance and they're not participating and not showing up in court, the court can do what's called default the party. And when they're in default, that means they're prohibited from kind of giving their side of the story and their side of the divorce. And once they're in default, the court can enter a divorce judgment in favor of the cooperative spouse. And as long as what the cooperative spouse is asking for is pretty reasonable. Mm-hmm. And of course, your attorney will help you figure that out, what should be reasonable, what you should ask for. And the court will then enter a divorce judgment pretty consistent. I've experienced in most of my cases, pretty consistent with what you're asking for when that happens. So that's not too bad. So if you've got a spouse who's saying, I'm not gonna show up, I'm not gonna participate, I don't agree to this, that's perfectly fine. You can still file for divorce. You don't have to have the parties agreeing that they're going to get a divorce to get one in Illinois. Okay, file the divorce, your attorney will help you through it. If they don't show up, you'll still get a divorce judgment. Now, the more difficult one is when you get a party who's actually participating, they've hired an attorney, but they're being uncooperative throughout the process. And that can be difficult. So oftentimes I tell clients, if your spouse is being uncooperative, we just try and be as reasonable as possible and try to make offers that are reasonable to see if we can engage them. If you can't engage them and they're still fighting everything and they're still being difficult, there's different processes you can use, like mediation. You've heard of mediation, right, Mike?
I have, sir.
So you can use mediation. You can either use a private mediator. Yes, it will cost a little more. Oftentimes it's about $1,000 per session, give or take. That will be added on to the expense to budget for it, but that can oftentimes be cheaper than trying a case. You have a guess as to how much it takes to how much it costs to try a divorce case, Mike?
Oh boy, good. Just to try it, right? You got to have to try it. I would put my number on 10 grand.
You're looking at 10 to 20 grand, and it could be more. If that's just the trial part, that's not the other aspects
right.
Leading up to it. So it can get expensive fast. So mediation is a good route. you can go if the spouse is not being cooperative. A mediator is going to be a third party who steps in, talks to both of the parties, and tries to get them to agree on issues. Mediator may or may not be able to settle all of them, but at least if the mediator can settle some of them, that's fewer issues you have to take to trial down the road, and that means a less expensive trial. Mediation is often used by the courts for the parenting issues. As a matter of fact, if the parties can't reach an agreement on the parenting issues, the court will often require them to participate in mediation to try and work it out first before going through the litigation process, because the court does not want the kids to be kind of dragged into the litigation of the divorce. So you'll, at the very least, have to mediate the parenting issues. Again, the court can't tell you or can't force you to agree, but the process itself usually results in some agreements, if not all of the issues resolved. And then I think the best way to kind of handle an uncooperative spouse, if you've tried all those things, you can go into the court and have the court hold what we call pretrial conferences or settlement conferences. And the judge will take it's not in a trial setting, it's more of an informal look at the case. But most judges, like I can tell you, especially in the suburban counties, all the judges who are in the divorce courts, they're experienced divorce attorneys typically. They've got experience in the areas of law and how to make decisions on things. So the judges will sit down and do these conferences with the attorneys and give them recommendations. And very often those recommendations are going to be pretty close to what the judge is going to say if it were to go to trial. So that gives everybody a good idea, and hopefully that can get parties to settle. So those are probably the biggest things you can do if you've got an uncooperative spouse. The last straw is push the matter to trial. Nobody likes to hear it. It's expensive, and it does take time. But if you see that you're going to have an uncooperative spouse from early on, just start getting yourself ready for, we're going to have to go to trial on this, and just try to push it to trial as soon as possible. Because the sooner you get it to trial, it'll cut down on those expenses. And you know what? Oftentimes, I will tell you, I've probably, what do you think? How many cases do you think I've tried? Or what percentage of divorce cases do you think I've tried, Mike?
Oh, a percentage?
Yes.
I actually don't think it's all that high. I would go probably 5 to 10%.
Yeah, that's definitely, that's right in the range. Yes, 5 to 10% of my divorce cases go to trial, and that's pretty consistent with the entire with the whole practice area. So more often than not, you push a case to trial on the steps of the courthouse the day before or the day of. The other party is finally going to start becoming reasonable and agreeable, and you'll reach a settlement. And it'll be at the 11th hour, but it's better than trying the case. So very often just having that pressure will get the party to a point to settle and get them to be more cooperative. But and if not, you go to trial and the judge decides, and the case will be over. You know, you will bring a conclusion to the case one way or the other.
Yeah, I think a lot of people envision most of the divorces are the trial kind. I mean, because that's what's always like glamorized and always out there, you know, kind of. But it's actually the exact opposite. It's actually the kind of the rare exception that they actually do go to trial, because the problem you got there is you have no control at that stage. Then it's just a matter of the verdict of handing it down, and you got to just abide by it.
Right, and the great majority of judges are going to try to do their best for the parties. But they're one person, and they don't know your whole life story. They don't know everything that's gone on in your divorce and your marriage, and they're going to try to do as best as they can with the information they have. So they'll try to do a good job, but it's unlikely and it's uncommon that both parties come out of a divorce saying, yes, that was great. I'm glad I went to trial, and that was a great decision for me. Most of the time, they're feeling a little bit in between. Okay, I like some of the stuff, but some of the other stuff I'm not really happy with. So if the parties can work it out between them and have a little more control over it, that's always a good thing. Because if the judge has to decide, like you said, that's it. That's the way it is. It's in an order. Now you got to abide by it.
That's it. Absolutely. So, all right. Well, we're going to wind down the week here. And I always like to offer our guests an opportunity to share just a little piece of wisdom, something, you know, that you find that's important, you know, some final thoughts on just divorce.
Sure. So my best bit of advice would be when you're going into it, talk to your attorney. Don't be afraid to ask questions and get yourself organized and have an understanding of what you're looking for. What are the most important things for you? Make a priority list. Don't fight every battle. Don't look to make every point an issue to dispute. Pick the most important ones and work on those. You're going to have to prioritize, and you're going to have to learn to work a little bit with the other side.
You know what? That's really good. That's really great advice, because you're not going to win it all.
No.
You know, you got to give some, you take some, but you know, the old die on certain hills, basically.
No, it never works. It never works.
It never does. Well, I'll tell you what, I appreciate you coming on all week. Our listeners got some very valuable information, and I'm appreciative that you shared what you did. And I tell you, we just scratched the surface. We might have to have you back on at a future date again.
Anytime, Mike, anytime.
Excellent. Well, this ends our week-long series. And once again, you're going to want to go back. If this is your first episode, go back the rest of the week, catch all the questions that Chris answered. That was really fantastic information. And then really, we're going to wind this down with just if you need help in his services, you got questions for him, his contact information's over in the description. Don't hesitate to reach out. And from Chris and I, we'd like to thank you for joining us all week on the Breaking Ties interview series. And remember, as I say all the time, divorce is not the end of your story. It is the start of your next great chapter. All right, everybody, take care, and we'll catch you on the next interview.
Take care. Thank you so much, Mike.